Are you curious about Gestalt language processing? You are not alone. Join me, Corinne Smoose, and speech therapy PD for our podcast, The Gestalt Get Together. Our episodes try to balance the enthusiasm and excitement about GLP and its associated intervention ideas, as well as a healthy dose of skepticism about how to understand and integrate this paradigm shift into your career and the field at large. We hope that you can get together with us to learn more about Gestalts.
Welcome to Brainstorms, Functional Neuro Rehab for SLPs, presented by SpeechTherapyPD.com. This podcast is designed for the adult medical speech-language pathologist. Most of our audience members work in settings such as acute care hospitals, private practice, outpatient hospital clinics, and inpatient rehabilitation hospitals. Each episode has an accompanying audio course on SpeechTherapyPD.com and is available for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. The content of this course is based on the research and experience of the presenters. The listener is responsible for researching to determine if the information and skills taught are appropriate for their clients, students, or patients. SpeechTherapyPD.com does not necessarily endorse, recommend, or favor the information shared, nor any of the claims, opinions, statements, offers, or services made by the presenter.
Trauma warning. As a trauma-informed care provider, it's important to let you know that this episode may contain subject matter that triggers some listeners. Incidents of traumatic events, injuries, and mental health issues will be discussed. Please listen with caution if these situations are a trauma or a mental health concern. While our guest continues to recover from these events, we want to let you know that these events may be difficult to listen to.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Renee Garrett and I'm your SpeechTherapyPD.com podcast host for Brainstorms, Functional Neuro Rehab for SLPs. Before we get started, we have a few items to alert you to. Each episode is 60 minutes and will be offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. Here are the financial and non-financial disclosures. Patrick Flanigan has no financial disclosures and non-financial disclosures relevant to this podcast. As a note, financial disclosure, he does receive an honorarium for his participation from SpeechTherapyPD.com. My financial disclosure is that I am a paid employee of a private consulting firm in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm also an adjunct faculty instructor at both James Madison University and Old Dominion University. And as the host of this podcast and other webinars on SpeechTherapyPD.com, I do receive financial reimbursement. My non-financial disclosure is that I am the secretary for the Communication Disorders Foundation of Virginia. Patrick Flanigan grew up in Forks and Rochester, Washington. He was active in Boy Scouts, working as an instructor at summer camp, attaining his Eagle Scout badge his senior year. Patrick was also very active in sports throughout school, lettering all 4 years in cross country, wrestling, and track. He joined the delayed entry program for the Navy 1 year before he graduated high school in 2001. He left for boot camp in June, and upon its completion, he went to Little Creek, Virginia, and began his training to become a Navy Explosives Ordnance Disposal Technician. After a long training pipeline, he graduated from EOD and associated schools in January 2004. During his 14-year career, Patrick spent 4 years in the Middle East, completing 5 deployments as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, supporting the Army, Marines, and Army Special Operations. In April 2011, after being struck on the freeway while on foot by an 18-wheeler, he was medically retired after sustaining a moderate to severe TBI, traumatic brain injury, with multiple brain bleeds and a multitude of orthopedic injuries. Throughout his long road to recovery, he went back to the Middle East as a contractor for 15 months. After returning to the U.S., he attained his bachelor's degree in strategic studies and defense analysis from Norwich University. He currently holds a government service position in support of the East Coast Group 2 Navy EOD while recovering daily. Welcome, Patrick. Great to see you.
Hi, Renee. It's good to see you again.
So let's start with, how was your day? How was your day today?
Well, actually, we can go into that too. It actually, today was it was a day that I'm used to, and a day I'm accustomed to, but it hasn't happened for a while. My brain was actually good thing we're doing this podcast right now. My brain was actually a little off today as far as cognition, speed of processing, and it was just nothing serious. I've learned to cope with it, and I've learned techniques to cope with it, but it was a little off, so slow, if you will.
I feel a little slow. I think it's because it's so hot here. I just
Yeah,
looked at the temp. It's like 92.
yeah, it's gotten. It seems like overnight. It just now it was okay, and it's disgusting. I
Yeah.
I'm not really looking forward to the heat.
Yeah. I don't like the cold, so here we are.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how you and I met, because we'll just go ahead and full disclosure, back in 2011, I still worked in inpatient rehab, and that is where we met. But let's talk a little bit about your journey and how you got to inpatient rehab. I know there's a lot of holes for you and a lot of things you don't remember, and we can kind of talk about that too, and the whys behind that.
Okay. Yes. Well, you want me to go from my first memory of meeting you?
That, or you can go from, what do you know about being in the hospital right after the accident?
Well, that's interesting. So my memories have gradually, especially in the first 5 years, gradually came back to me, and the holes were filled in slightly better. There's still holes, but I woke up in a hospital bed, tubes all in me, and didn't know what was going on, and decided I was going to try and get up and walk, and didn't really work too well. I had a lot of injuries, and I guess I tried to get up, tried to walk, didn't work out. Got in a wheelchair on my own, lived myself in the nurse's station, and the nurse looked like she saw a ghost. She was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing out of bed?" So in that time period, yeah, it's probably still fuzzy. I say I probably remember about 60% of it as far as the accident and what happened. I remember about 5% of it, 10% of it still. That's gone. It's never coming back, I don't think. But
Yeah. Well, and
hey,
we
I
talked
guess
about that. We talked about that a lot because, your brain was in fight or flight mode. Your brain was trying to keep your body alive. It wasn't trying to help you remember a traumatic experience that would, cause a lot of other issues besides the ones that you experienced anyway. So
yes,
it's a
yes,
protective mechanism, and that's okay.
yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the injury part, because you mentioned getting up out of the bed. Why was that such a big deal to the staff, the medical staff? What kind of
Well,
injuries did you have as far as orthopedic goes?
orthopedic, I had a number of injuries. So head to toe, subdural hematomas, 4 brain bleeds, I think. Don't quote me. I'm pretty sure it was 4 brain bleeds. My occipital lobe, my left eye was really broken up, I guess. My eye was doing its own thing for a while, which you helped me with that as well. And going down, I had a collapsed lung. My left lung was collapsed. My ribs were all sorts of broken. Open book pelvis fracture, fractured femur, and my left ankle was just pulverized, multiple fractures. So, and
Yeah. So you had a lot of orthopedic surgeries kind of right out of the gate, because you had the rod put in your femur, you had hardware in your pelvis, you had hardware in your ankle. So I'm sure that when you just decided to wheel yourself down, they were like, "What the heck?"
it was yes, it was. I want to say I think it was. I can't remember exactly how long, but I believe it was about a week. It might have been. It could have been
A little
10 days
longer.
after. 10 days, yeah. It definitely. I was so drugged up. I remember getting out of bed and I stood and I tried standing and I fell. When I was trying to walk, I kind of fell over and I heard a lot of. I didn't feel it, but I heard a lot of noises that you shouldn't hear your body making, like a ratchet. So it was, and man, it was not pleasant. But I couldn't feel anything, so I knew I'm fine, I'm good. But the confusion, I was very, very confused. I was very I didn't know what was going on, and I was almost, I wouldn't say in the mindset of like a little kid, but I didn't know what the heck was going on. I knew I was injured, and I knew I was not in a good place physically.
Hmm.
So
Well, and you were intubated for airway protection and then also sedated. You did wind up self-extubating.
Yes, I'm pulling my tube out often. I think I did multiple times, and I got yelled at, and I believe they tied me down and put mitts on my hands so I wouldn't do it. Which that was challenge accepted. I was not gonna, I wasn't gonna let them keep it in there. But I wouldn't recommend, if you know anything, if you can have any wits about you, do not pull your tube out. It's uncomfortable, but do not do that, because my voice has been messed up ever since. It could be from the accident, probably from the tube that I pulled out of my throat multiple times. So
yeah, well, let's talk about that. So you had true vocal fold paralysis on the right side.
yes, yeah.
Okay. And so that was another little kind of career first. And I'm trying to remember how long after you'd been out of the hospital for quite a while, because you'd already been up to McGuire at Richmond and come back. It was a long time before you got your vocal cord injection.
Oh yes, it was. I don't know exactly how long. I can't remember. Do you recall? I don't know if I got it at Riverside or if right
No,
after.
you got it at the
Riverside.
Naval Hospital as an outpatient, and it was a while. I think it was like 2 years later, maybe.
It
Long
was.
time.
It was years later. Yes, I did have. I had multiple vocal cord injections, and my voice now is much better than it was. I sounded like Don Corleone. I think the first like probably month. I know when I met you, I could barely speak, and I was barely whispering. So
Yeah. And you had a lot of vocal fatigue, which impacted your swallowing. You know, we did a lot with swallowing and sticking the camera up your nose, the fees.
yes,
We did,
I do remember that.
I
That
think we
was
did 2 or 3, something like that.
yeah, that was rather uncomfortable, but yeah, it happens, and it has to be done. So
Well,
that's
I'll just remind you of what you actually said. You said it wasn't as bad as what I thought.
well,
I
no,
bet
that is
worse.
true. That is true, and I actually I will say you were much better. I went to an ENT an ENT at another hospital many years later. Whew, he was horrible. He was bad. He might as well just took a drill and drilled a hole in my nose and then just shoved it down. It was horrible. So yeah, you were much better than anyone I've experienced. So
Well, thanks.
yeah.
I tried to be good at my skills. So we kind of talked a lot about injuries. What do you remember about the initial therapies that you got?
Well, the initial therapies, I remember nothing from I don't remember any. I don't even remember being there. Um, nothing from that. Actually, I don't. I remember my first memory was probably in Riverside, and I think I don't know how many weeks. It probably would have been 6 weeks, maybe. It was definitely that's gone. I'm never gonna get that back. I've come to that realization. But the therapies, I remember honestly, I remember thinking to myself when I was being taught how to eat again and swallow food and chew food, like, what the heck? Like, I'm a grown man. I deployed so many times to bad places, and I do a job that no one else really does. And why am I learning how to eat again? So, but I rapidly learned that drinking water became very hard with a paralyzed vocal cord, and swallowing and eating. So that's one of the ones that's most memorable to me. And again, that time period is just fuzzy still.
Yeah. And it probably, like you said, it probably always will be. But you had to learn once you were cleared for weight bearing, you had to learn how to walk. You had to learn how to get dressed, brush your teeth. I mean, you had a long ways to go. So
Yes. Well, and then also like even taking a shower on my own was I had to be cleared to do that, and it was, I mean, just your ADLs, your activities daily living, which is what the term I learned doing all my therapies. It just doing basic things you take for granted, having to relearn all that stuff that I learned when I was a kid. Hey, I mean, it's something that you have to do. It's something that has to happen. I realize now that it was necessary, but at the time, I'm a grown man. Leave me alone.
Yeah, you were definitely you're a grown man. I heard that a lot.
Yes, yes.
But I think one of the interesting parts too is that there were some staff that were kind of, afraid of you. You really weren't. I never felt like you were aggressive towards anyone. We certainly were trained with TBI patients to watch out for that and know what to do and how to diffuse situations, but I don't remember you ever being aggressive. It was more so you were, we'll just call it mouthy. You
Yeah.
said
Well,
you were mouthy a lot,
yeah, yeah,
but you were also redirectable. And I think part of that was probably like your upbringing, but also your military background that you were used to having a set of rules and
yes,
following that set of rules. So once people came in and had kind of established that with you and established rapport, I think it was a lot better for you. Um, but let's kind of fast forward a little bit and talk about like what happened once you were able to eat, once you were able to start walking again, and you got to that point where you discharged from the initial inpatient rehab stay. You were still pretty, you were nothing like you are now. Let's
yes.
just state that.
Okay.
How many other courses of therapy when it came to like PT, OT, and speech would you say you had since that point? Because that was 13 years ago.
Oh, geez. I honestly, I just finished. I've been doing in the initial portion, the first, I would say 2 years, maybe even 3 years. It was pretty intense. It was at least for the first 6 months, every day of the week, except weekends, Monday through Friday. I would my profession became, and as far as I would say, it started to taper off, but there's rehabilitation for my eyes. I mean, there was actually a lot of a lot of rehab for like things that we worked on, motor function, just using your fingers and being able to use your hands and just learning how to do basic stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and then
And
it
that was
tapered off. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, that was more the OT piece, but you and I
Yeah.
did more with cognition and swallowing than probably anything.
Oh, there was a there was a lot. There's a lot of cognition. That's the thing until so I would say the first 5 years for sure. There was cognitive therapy, like I said, there's OT, and then cognitive therapy was 5 days a week, and that pretty much kept up for at least the first year, maybe 14 months. I think it was probably every day. And then it started tapering off until I eventually in 2018, I would say, I really virtually stopped doing that because then when I enrolled in college, I had been done doing cognitive therapy for maybe 6 months. And that was my very intensive cognitive therapy. But I mean, it was, stacking blocks, I'm trying to, there's so many, any exercise you can think of, remembering numbers, remembering sequences. There's so much. If I see any more cards with people's faces on it with different color hair and different marks and birthmarks, and having to remember all that, I would go insane. I've
Well, that's
probably
one thing
done.
I never made you do that because that's not how I operate.
Yes, yes. Well,
But
yes, thank you.
you did have some opportunities, like we mentioned, you went up to McGuire
Yes.
for the veterans program up there, and then you also went up to, was it Bethesda?
Yes, I went to Bethesda, Maryland, to NICO, which is a military program. But yes, that was very, very, very. That was that was intensive cognitively, but it was also his whole body. It was all my body.
Yeah,
So do you want me to go more into that, or
whatever you're comfortable with.
I mean, I'll go into anything you want. I was, like I said, my profession became a professional. My profession became, rather. Now there's a TBI stuff going on. I'm thinking faster than I'm talking. I was a rehab. I can't think of the word. Professional rehab person.
Yeah,
And go ahead, sorry.
participant. You were a
Yeah.
professional rehab participant.
Yes. And as like I was saying today, if I would have spoke to you a few days ago, I might be probably, things might be coming out of my head, words. But this morning, for the first time in a long time, I woke up and it was just I wasn't thinking. I have a dog, and I put his vest on every morning. I feed him. We get him ready to go to work, and he's in the corner. I don't know if you can see him there,
Yeah.
but his name is Knox, and
Aw.
he's my service dog. But I forgot his vest. I got to work and I forgot his vest. I forgot his collar. I forgot everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, this hasn't happened in years, but it's just one of those days. So, but anyways, my professional rehab I did that for a number of years, and then I went back to college. And at this point, I knew I had already had coping mechanisms that I had been given or that had been shown to me to cope with my cognitive deficiencies or my inability to remember things, my short-term memory. And so that helped me with my everyday life. And I went back to work. I was working. I was working as a trainer at the EOD unit, training the guys that were leaving, getting ready to go off to combat environments. So I was able to use the skills I learned and apply them to my situation and be able to function adequately and get back to close to the level that I was at before. I just had to. It was quite a bit harder. Everyday activities in life were very much the increase in difficulty was noticeable, but it is you're able to overcome it because people like you and there's many other people out there that they've trained for this and there's vetted ways to overcome and maybe compensate for the deficiencies that you have. So,
Yeah. When you also did some more holistic therapies too, that were, maybe some things that a lot of people don't know about. No, like you did you went to therapy, like psychotherapy stuff.
yes,
And you kind of had to keep that hidden, right? Because of your career.
yes.
Because you were sort of in this position where when everything first happened, it took how many years to get medically retired? Because it was a long time, right? Like
Um,
2, 3 years.
yes. My apologies that there's someone at the door, so the dogs are howling and going off.
I didn't
If you
hear
can
you.
hear them, okay. I got medically retired. This happened in April 12th, 2011, and I got medically retired. It was June of 2015, so it was about 4 years.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
So we were talking about how the gap in time when you got medically retired, but you were going to therapy to kind of cope with everything, but you had to kind of go off the beaten path, if you will. You couldn't go through the system
Yes, yes.
because of the kind of stigma surrounding that with active duty military.
Well, yeah, that's something that I'm very happy to say now is they actually have embedded mental health at the units now, which is amazing because between that and neurotherapy, I screamed from the rooftops. I had meetings with people, and it seemed like it fell on deaf ears. And at that point, at a certain point, I realized, okay, well, I'm not going to get back to the level I was at right now, and it might take me a decade. It might take me more, but I'm. Then at that point, I was like, well, it's whatever. I'm just going to do what I can to help bring awareness and just let people know, hey, you know what? There's a lot of people from my generation that have been, they have issues that they don't deal with and they have not dealt with and they should. So just hey, mental health, it's great, do it. And they're actually they didn't listen to me, but the military has changed and they are now welcoming people to see and embrace the mental health community and utilize mental health as a tool because well this controls this. And if you want to be an effective operator, if you want to be a very effective person in the military, you want to keep this working because this controls everything else. And the military's realized that too. Like, hey, you are our equipment. If the engine's not running right, then you're detriment to us. So we need to keep it running right. So,
Yeah.
But as well as physical therapy, they have started a number of programs in my community that they really focus heavily on, probably more so on the physical than mental, but it's the mental's rapidly gaining ground. But they do focus on injuries and pre-treatment and doing things in a way that don't cause injuries and will keep you running optimally, so they don't have to fix you later on. So,
Yeah. So yeah, let's back up a little bit, and I want to get back to the therapy piece because I want to talk about relationships, but let's back up for a second and just talk about the fact that prior to this accident that changed the course of everything else after in Iraq, how many injuries did you have prior to this that you for sure knew about? Like blast
um,
injuries.
well, I actually, I do know that this obviously this injury is the worst. I didn't get any brain bleeds, but I had a number of, I guess, undiagnosed, or at the time they happened, they didn't really know about TBI, but they didn't acknowledge it or whatever. But there's multiple incidents that I know of. I know of 3 that I was knocked out from from explosions. I had superficial wounds, but the biggest thing was my head and being knocked out and the multiple concussions. I mean, we used to, when I was in, we would go and there would be the breachers. They would have guys that were 10 feet from a blast. I mean, I used to love the feeling of feeling that shockwave go through my body. It was amazing. Well, apparently that's bad for the brain. So, and yeah, and I remember at the time, I mean, even coming up in the community when I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, come here, you need close, get closer, and I was just like, yeah. But so there's 3 separate incidents that they were definite TBIs, and after my last one, on my second to last deployment, that's when I noticed effects. That's when my wife noticed effects. And I came back and I was forgetting things. My short-term memory was horrible. I would walk upstairs sometimes in the 2-story we have, and then I'd be like, what did I come up here for? And I was, whatever, just kept going, just go a million miles an hour. And there's always a lot of things that we do. We do 4 different things at once. But yeah, my memory was definitely degraded after that deployment. And that's when I started to notice there was minor deficiencies in word selection and recall, and it wasn't anything like it was after my accident on the freeway, but there was something there. And my wife would say, oh, didn't I already tell you that, or didn't you tell me that the other day? And so then I started writing things down, which came in handy because I really wrote things down after I had met you, because I couldn't remember anything. I would go to sleep and my mind would get wiped. I wouldn't remember anything. I wake up the next morning like, okay, I know where I'm at. It took me a couple months to realize that I know where I'm at. I know what happened, but no, I was going to do something. And the fact that I could even remember I was going to do something was a positive note that I was going in a direction, a good direction. Because, yeah, you could probably tell stories, but.
Well, we had before we tell the stories, one thing I wanted to mention too is after you had that pretty significant injury the 3rd time prior to the accident, were you noticing or were other people commenting on your personality and changes in your personality?
I other than my wife, because she obviously was around me most. No, the guys, I think, I don't recall. I mean, people may have, but I don't remember anyone saying anything about that. Probably because, well, most of the guys that I worked with had the same type of injuries, and possibly anger, aggression. That would be maybe underlying like frustration and not really admitting it or even realizing it. There's frustration there, and why there was a frustration. But yeah, I think that would probably be the biggest thing. But no one said anything because we all just, we're a bunch of EOD guys with many deployments and to bad places. So, you're just angry. That's just normal.
Yeah. Well, and just it's fair to mention that when all this happened, you were in your 20s. So the anticipation of you having word finding difficulty or short-term memory loss or any of the things that you mentioned would not have been the norm for the course of your life had you not sustained these pretty significant concussions and then haven't had prior to the big accident, you wouldn't have had that as a normal 20-something-year-old.
No, not at all. And there was a definite clear divide because I still remember pretty much like how I was before that last, that second last deployment. And when I came back, and hindsight's always 2020. But yeah, I most definitely was degraded. I couldn't give you a percentage, but there was some definite problems and defects going on. So
Well, and I think too, it's another great point to mention that you were very physically fit. You were always athletic. You had a crazy workout regimen even when you were deployed, you know, and I think in some regards that's it. Well, it's great, but it was really great for your recovery because even though you lost a significant amount of weight and had all these injuries, had you not been super fit and very healthy prior to, we may have seen a different outcome. And so I
yes,
think that's a good point. Because when you were finally, in the hospital, you were very limited on what you could do because of the injuries that you sustained. But when you were finally able to get back out and start working out, what did you notice anything about your stamina? How long did that kind of take to come back? Has it come back?
yes, no, it most definitely has. I surprisingly or unsurprisingly, I feel, other than my strength, that took a while to come back because I had lost 40 pounds, almost 40 pounds. And it came back relatively quickly. It just that I was overdoing it sometimes, and I was setting myself back by overdoing it because I'm in the mindset, hey, I used to do this. All I know is this level. But it came back relatively quickly. I mean, my body probably, I don't know, I ignored some stuff that I shouldn't have, but my body was saying, hey, slow down. And I was like, no, my mind was like, no, we got this. But I bounced back fairly quickly. Now, as far as getting my weight back and getting my strength back took quite a while. But
Mhm.
that was also because I was restricted, and I started listening after many, many, many talks from people like yourself that, hey, you're gonna mess yourself up. Don't do it so quickly. You gotta do what we say and just do what we say, nothing more. So
Well, and what were those kind of signs that you felt like your body was giving you some symbols and some signs, and you were like, no, my brain says I can do it?
Are you taking advantage of our new amazing feature? The Certificate Tracker. The free CE Tracker allows you to keep track of all of your CEUs, whether they are earned with us at speechtherapypd.com or through another provider. Simply upload your certificate to your registered account and you're all set. So come join the fastest growing CE provider, speechtherapypd.com.
well, it would just be, I mean, maybe I could do it at the time, but maybe later on I'd be like, ooh, okay, that's not normal. Like I'm not that like a pain or some sort of something in my body telling me, hey, we did not like that. I did not like that, and I really don't want to do that again or that hard again. And it was usually after the fact. There was a time where I went and, I mean, being stubborn, I was about, it was after I left you guys, after I left the Riverside. And sorry, I still associate you with Riverside, so that's just
It's
in my head
fine.
thing. But after I left Riverside, my buddy that was living with me, my great friend who took care of me and was there to give my wife a break. He's a saint. he was living with us there, and then he came back here when I came back to my house, and we were like, guys, all right, let's work out, let's do this. And we, within a week, I think I was running, which I didn't recover as quickly from that as I normally. My hip, my femur, my ankles, just sharp pains. And the next day I was running fine. We were doing great pace, good running. But the next day my body said, "Oh no, I did not like that."
Well,
you
let's be honest about this run. This wasn't like a half mile or 1 mile to get you started. What did you do? You went in full
well,
force.
yes. Because I knew this is where I was at. Now they cleared me, or well, I thought they cleared me. I didn't know it wasn't cleared, but I was released from the places I was. So okay, and he was in decent shape. So it was like, hey man, and he probably also pushed me because I used to always kick his butt running, but he was like, I'm gonna beat him this time. So we did a few laps around our lake, and it wasn't too far, maybe 2.5 miles, something like that. But I'm used to, okay, well, I got my pace, and no, that was not smart. My body told me, no, don't do that anymore. Not like that.
Would you say your nutrition, you feel like your nutrition played any kind of role? Did you do any kind of programs with looking at brain health and nutrition as part
Um,
of any of your stuff?
Initially, I did not, because again, I went back to what I knew and what I was doing before, and I was in great shape, and I was getting ready to do some things that before an accident. So I had a huge regimen. I was big in exercise, doing all this stuff, and I thought I could jump back into it. Well, youth was youth overcame my wits, or my brain, and I was just jump right back into that. But now, and throughout the course of my rehabilitations, I did learn more about brain health, and foods and stuff to eat, and better things for you than others. I mean, I would say I mainly eat for my long-term health and my brain health. But at the time, no, I didn't. I mean, when I had friends sneak in McDonald's when I was in Riverside.
I
I,
snuck you a piece of pizza, so
yeah, yes, you did. Well, we can say that now. But no, I would highly recommend anyone. One, if you have a TBI, if you do get a TBI, accept it, and accept there's ways that you can overcome it. Because I was literally, I would say probably 30 minute to 1 hour Tom for the first portion when I first woke up. Every morning I would wake up, my wife would explain to me what happened to me, where I was, everything's gonna be fine. And it probably took me about 2 weeks to remember, hey, this is what happened, where I was when I woke up the next day. But I wish it wasn't a bad day, because I'm not really showing that well, but I forgot where I was going with that.
no, so I think this is a good spot for me to jump in, because one of the things that we worked out, because you would get so upset if Carly left or even went down to get something to eat, that because you couldn't remember that she was coming back. You didn't
Yes.
remember that she had been there that morning. Um and so what we did was we had like this little written schedule, and she would leave you a note, or I would write it down with the time and the time she was planning to come back. Because a lot of times if we had therapy scheduled during that time and she didn't stay with you, you couldn't get through it because you were so hyper focused on where did she go, and did she leave me? Is she coming back? And you had this really big sense of abandonment. Um, and I think the system helped, but you still needed those reminders, and you needed that visual to be able to look at it and say, and I would have to say, okay, we just talked about this. Look at your sheet. Where is she at? Where did she go? How
Yeah.
long did she say she thought she would be gone? Because sometimes she just wanted to go home and take a shower in her own bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was nothing unreasonable. And
Yes. And
she mentioned it when we recorded together that, she felt very fortunate because we did have a family suite that she stayed at for almost the entirety of your stay
yes.
until you became more comfortable with her being able to leave, or someone else like Jeremy being able to come in and stay with you and kind of guide you through that. But it was definitely a process of helping you with that part. One of the other things you talked about too was like ADLs, but one of the things that you really wanted once you got cleared for swallowing, other than the pizza, and the only reason I snuck him the pizza for those who are listening is because we were waiting for the doctor to change his order from a mechanical, I think it was ground, because we weren't
Yeah.
using IDDSI at the time, to regular because we did a fees and we did a pretty extensive fees where he was able to eat and look at fatigue and duration and all that kind of stuff in combination with the physiology part of his swallowing. And we were waiting for the doctor. They were taking forever. And we had some kind of employee something that day, and you smelled the pizza and you were like, I want a piece of pizza.
Yeah, and I actually I vividly remember that. It's, smells obviously directly connected to your brain, your olfactory senses. But oh my gosh, after eating, I was fine with the food I was eating. I actually I don't mind hospital food. It's fine. It's healthy. There's no seasoning. My nose is hypersensitive, so I don't season a lot now. And at the time I didn't want seasoning because I'm fine. But that pizza, oh my gosh. I didn't realize how what I was missing out, because I forgot what it was like until I smelled it. And then I tasted it. I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is like, oh, it was an aha moment. So
Yeah.
but
Well, we didn't even talk about hearing loss either, because are you still wearing your hearing aids?
yep. I'm yep.
Yeah. So that was
So well, the hearing loss. So yeah, with now I had hearing loss from again from, like I was saying, that the different explosions, but especially the second last deployment, that one was my left ear. But I I also believe that, and people can't really explain this. I've talked to a number of doctors, and I believe it has something to do with the TBI. It's there's hearing loss, but there's also, I think it's processing. There's something with my CPU unit. The processing of the stimulus coming in to my ears is off, and it has gotten a little better, but I still, if there's any background noise, I hear everything going on, but it's all just a bunch of garbled. It doesn't come through correctly. And if I'm talking to you and we're in a crowded room with people talking, I've learned, and I still do this. I read your lips, and I can
yeah.
hear maybe bits and pieces, maybe 30% of the sounds coming out of your mouth, and process that. But I'm reading your lips because I'm not deaf. But there's hearing loss, but I think it's more processing.
Yeah, and definitely some speech sound discrimination stuff, which is why that background noise really drives you crazy. Um, so one more thing I want to talk about, and then I want to get into some of the positives and things that you've been able to do, because we've talked a lot about your injuries and your career, how that was impactful. But one of the things that we kind of wanted to touch on was relationships and how the TBI and its recovery affected relationships, whether that was family, professional, friends, whichever one you want to go into, or all of the
Yeah.
above.
Well, and again, as things progressed and things got better now, really now I think most people that don't know me, if I just met you on the street and we start talking, you would have no idea I ever had a TBI. But at the time, and especially in the very beginning, it did affect relationships. One, because it was hard, it was taxing, it was very tiring to maintain. I was a social butterfly. I was very, very, not a politician, but I had a lot of friends, talked to a lot of people. I always interacted with people because I like people, but it was taxing, it was hard, and people, I think people, they could realize there was something wrong, because I would say a sentence or two and then I'd stop and think about what I'm saying next, process what they told me. And I think that was detrimental to more of my, yeah, work colleagues, maybe friends, but superficially, I lost a lot of, I'd say I lost a lot of relationships then because I really couldn't keep up, because I couldn't keep up with the pace of life at first. And that was very depressing, very, very, it brings you down. Although at a certain point I realized, okay, well, hey, I mean, I'll just keep going, and people, things, relationships that I have, if they're strong, they'll continue to be a relationship. But as far as personal relationships with family, I mean, everyone understood. Everyone was very understanding, and they were very patient and kind. I know my wife was very frustrated because she was my memory for years, and I relied on her to be my memory. So that was very taxing and hard on her. And there was stressors there as far as my temperament. I was much shorter fuse, and until I could, I guess, realize I had a temperament deficiency, I guess. I don't know. My patience was my tolerance for people, or for interacting with people that were, doing things that were not to my liking. I was done with that. And then my fuse got very short, and I wouldn't be able to process or realize, hey, they did this. I was just like, why did you do that? What the heck? And now, if it took me a while to process and think about, okay, why they did that, or why they were doing this. For a while there, it was foreign to me. So, but it does affect relationships, and I would say the strong ones will continue to be there. The ones, I mean, I shed a lot of friends, and it's just the way it was. I'm fine with that. Now looking back, I'm like, okay, well, it wasn't that strong a relationship. I don't need to waste my time on them. So,
I mean,
but
that's a good way of looking at it, but it took you a long time to get to that place, because it was
yes,
not only were you kind of angry about it, but it's hurtful. And like you mentioned, depression is a real part of recovery too, just from the
yes,
TBI. And then you've got all these extrinsic outside forces that are kind of compounding that, because these are people that you trusted and you worked with and were supposed to have your back, and then they just sort of disappeared off to the side. And
yeah,
yeah.
it is, and I might not. At the time, I might not have even processed why I felt that way. I might not have been able to, but yeah, I was like, what the heck, man? Thanks. Good thing I
Yeah.
relied on you, and and not on deployment, but good thing I relied on you for my job. It was kind of, it was hurtful, but I wasn't able to process it. And the emotional processing, that was a big thing too. It's just understanding intuitively, like everyone does. Hey, this is why I'm feeling that emotion. Being able to dissect it, I wasn't able to do that for years. I was not able to do that. So, which it affected a lot of relationships, but at this point, it was positive growth. I've done a lot of positive growing, and I love psychology, and so I was really able to. It helped me develop a lot of understanding how people work, and
Hmm.
it was good though. It was very positive. Everything happens for a reason. I sat in Riverside, going, driving myself insane, crazy, and even for years afterwards, of why this happened, why did this happen, but everything does happen for a reason, and you can always, there's no situation I've ever been in since the accident that you can't turn into a learning experience and get something positive out of it. It's just how you look at it. It's your perception of reality. um it's hard for sure, but
So that's a good place to jump in, because, and I'm very proud of you for going back and finishing your degree. But how hard was that? Because it took you how long to finish? You had started, you had some coursework under your belt before this
yes,
all happened.
essentially, let's see, it would have been right around 2 years, but it was during COVID, which helped me out in the long run because everything was closed, everything was shut down, and to include the military. A lot of the military didn't go to work for a long time, so I was able to telework or check in. Hey, I'm alive. Don't have COVID, but it was the absolute hardest thing cognitively I've ever done in my life. I sat in the room I'm in right now, and I would say average 8 hours a day. I was in here and I was studying, I was reading, I was learning how to write, I was learning all the stuff that I used to know, but it was gone, or it was so spotty. There's so many holes. I couldn't function. I essentially was starting from scratch, or starting from scratch. And I was in here often. There's some days I would spend 12 hours in this room, but I mean, I did that for about, in the beginning, definitely the first 13 months. And after a while, it became my drug, so to speak, because when my brain really started working and firing, and I was like, give me more. This is amazing. My brain, I was learning so quickly, and things were coming back and memories were coming back. There were so many things that were happening. I was like, this is amazing. I want to keep this going. And it took me, like I said, it was around about 2 years, a little more than 2 years, because I already had coursework under my belt, and I already had, just by my job and my old career, I had stuff that counted towards classes. So, but it was an intensive 2 years. It was the hardest thing, and I remember virtually crying, like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get this. But resilience, and just keep, not literally banging your head against the wall, but you keep doing it over and just be resilient, keep going, and knowing that things will change. Eventually you'll crest the hill, and then it's pretty awesome. It's pretty amazing. I will say it was like a drug. It's one of the best feelings. When I got my degree, I was like, this is amazing. I want to go back and get another degree. This is so awesome. So
That's great.
yeah.
And I think another really great, let's talk about Knox, because that's another really great thing that happened.
Here, bud. Oh yeah, Knox. So I had, so with the TBI, come on, bud. Up. With the TBI, he's decided to lay down, but he's like, I was sleeping. So
I was off duty. Why'd you wake me up?
yeah. With the TBI, especially after let's say the first year and a half. Sorry, my other dog wants to come in and say hey. The first year and a half, there was a lot of chemicals that were off in my brain. And so that contributed, I think, a lot to, depression and highs and lows. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, I'm not crazy, but I felt crazy, because I would be on top of the world and then I would be down, and within a matter of, 4 hours. And I'm like, what the heck? This is weird. But that's something I didn't want to say. So with Knox, and I had anxiety. I've done a lot of crazy stuff and a lot of hairy stuff overseas, and I won't say a lot, but there's been by normal standards, it would be a lot. And I developed, after my TBI, I get just anxiety out of the blue. I could be sitting here, if I smell something, or if something lines up, I hear something, and then I just, rapid heart rate, I start getting panicked, and I might start breathing heavy, or I might start sweating. And that's why I finally, after many years of prompting, I got Knox, because I noticed when I was in Bethesda, Maryland, I was around the canine division there, and I noticed dogs relax me. Dogs, they relax me. And there's actually studies on this, and horses too, that your brain releases oxytocin, which is a feel good chemical. And dogs do that for me. So whenever I got Knox and training Knox, I noticed that, okay, I'm having less panic attacks. I'm feeling better, and I'm more stable. So that's why I got this guy right here. And he also does other things with my mobility issues, my back issues, different things, injuries that I sustained. He helps me with that as well. If I drop my phone or pick it up for me, he can open doors. He can open cabinets, but mainly it's for the anxiety. I haven't had an anxiety attack in probably 10 months, which is amazing. Where it used to be every other day or more. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. use, if there's tools that you can use and you can utilize for help or for, to cope, coping mechanisms or tools, then I would highly recommend it. Accept that you have an issue. That was my biggest thing.
Mhm.
I don't want to accept it for years and years. But once I accept it, okay, I've got problems. Okay, then I can start fixing, because then I can pinpoint where the problems are and utilize all the things I learned. Hey, look at that. You guys know what you're talking about.
Well, and I think the anxiety was a big one, but one of the things I wanted to have you talk about is your project that you've been working on, because again, so many people feel like they're isolated, and the mental health piece is such a big part of recovery, but then also the loss of what you thought was going to be a lifelong career. And so you've turned that into something else now. And I think it's worth mentioning, what you're working on and what your big project is that you've been a part of, and it's really coming together nicely.
Yes. Okay. Well, there was an organization my friend started, NSOF, and he said, we were talking one day, and he was the chairman of the board and of that organization. He was like, "Hey, I want to do a memorial for the people in my community, and and the people have died, and people have passed away and been killed, and so it's been." This August it should be coming to fruition and completion, but it will have been 4 years that from inception, from me and him talking until the completion of it. But going through the different rehabs and therapies and the holistic, being introduced in Bethesda, Maryland, to the more holistic Eastern philosophy approach to medicine. Meditation, tranquility, and just peace it was the whole theme of the memorial, instead of being a DC type memorial. And there's a pathway. Along the pathway there's plinths that have pictures, which we developed, or plaques rather, to tell the story from our inception to where we are now. And then it goes to an archway, a labyrinth, and an archway, and a bunch of granite pillars with on this archway there's the names of the fallen. And it's a memorial, but and there's also, sorry, I went with that. The big thing was the garden. There's a huge garden. It's very filled with colorful plants and bright, cheery things. I was trying to get away from the DC cold style and make it more a place of healing, and like a memorial, but also healing for people here, the people that knew them, the families, and so it's coming along very nicely. And again, the granite should be done, and we should have that installed in August. And then we're gonna have the ribbon cutting and the unveiling, and it's meant to be a peaceful place of remembrance that people can go to, and it's more positive. I mean, remember the positive times with the people on the rock, the people that have perished. So it's a good place. It's a very good project that's come to already bring a lot of people together.
Yeah. So what's the name of it, so people know?
It's the NSOF EOD Diver Memorial, or NSOF Memorial. It's on Little Creek Base, and you can actually type in NSOF in Google, and the link at the first page that pops up will be NSOF, and that's the nonprofit that it'll tell you what they do, and there's also a link for the memorial. It's a separate page, but it's on that website, so it'll tell you all about it, and it'll give you there's a lot of great information. If you want to get more involved, then by all means you can become more involved with it. So
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm very proud of you, and I thank you for doing this, because I know it's been important for both of us to bring awareness throughout the time that we've known each other. And if we can help one person or 5 people realize they're not alone, I think has always been sort of the thing that's kept us working on different projects. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I know it's not always easy to talk about the things that happen, but it's important to end with the things that are positive, and the goals and things that you've achieved, that you set for yourself. And even though they were hard, you did it. So I think that's notable. And
sorry,
so just as no, what, did you have something
I was
else?
gonna say one thing. I say, yeah, you said something right there, positivity. it takes a lot more energy to be negative and be grumpy and aggravated all the time. A lot of energy, and it's very taxing. And it's just to keep that up. It's a lot better to be positive, and helping other people who've gone through this type of thing has been probably some of the most positive things I've done. And that I get as much as I give. It's amazing. Being positive and having a positive attitude and positive outlook will help you so much in your own. So
Yeah. Thank you again, Patrick. It's great to see you and look forward to seeing you again.
thank you, Renee. It was good talking, man.
If you have indicated that you are part of the ASHA registry and entered both your ASHA number and a complete address in your account profile prior to the course completion, we will submit earned CEUs to ASHA. Please allow 1 to 2 months from the completion date for your CEUs to be reflected on your ASHA transcript. Each episode comes with an accompanying course on speechtherapypd.com, available for a 0.1 ASHA CEU. And just for our listeners, get $20 off any subscription with promo code BRAINSTORMS20. SpeechTherapyPD.com is run by SLPs for SLPs. We've got the largest library of ASHA CEU eligible courses out there, adding fresh content every week. Remember, use BRAINSTORMS20 to get $20 off access to over 1,000 courses for an entire year. Head over to SpeechTherapyPD.com for more information and start earning CEs today. Thanks for tuning in to Brainstorms Functional Neuro Rehab for SLPs. And don't forget, SpeechTherapyPD.com is your go-to for all things ASHA CEUs. Your positive reviews and support mean the world to us. We'd love for you to drop us a quick review and hit that follow button.